I will call the 5th annual general meeting of Peterborough Independent Podcasters to order at 4:05 on November 2nd, 2021. So thanks everybody for coming. My name is Rob Haleman. I am the president of Peterborough Independent Podcasters. I've had the joy and the privilege to be on this board pretty much since day one of the organization as a corporation, which has been really rewarding. It's been really fascinating, the stuff we've been able to accomplish and getting to know my fellow board members and volunteers and members. So before we move into things, I just want to summarize how we're going to conduct the voting for this. It's the same as we did it last year, if you were here, just because it is we're an organization with a pretty small membership, and even online, it is a challenge to get people together at a time when we can all have a quorum of meetings. We found it was more accessible to do the voting after the fact through a Google form. So what we're going to do is we're going to conduct the meeting literally going through the motions, I guess. So we'll go through the agenda, we'll present all the reports, there'll be opportunities for questions and discussions and to have amendments from the floor or whatever the case may be. But we won't actually be conducting any voting at this meeting. Instead, there's a Google form as a survey that we've prepared, and that we have an opportunity to amend that if there is anything that changes or any motions that aren't here that come from the floor during this meeting. And that will be sent out to the membership after the fact, and there'll be a 3-week voting period to ensure that everybody has a chance to, if they couldn't make it, as a chance to watch this recording if they so choose, or to read the package and to vote on the motions that we prepare. So as we go through, I will be asking for motions from the membership, but we won't be conducting votes on those motions as we go through. So are there any questions about how we're going to conduct the voting before I move on? All right, so seeing none, we have on the screen in front of us the agenda for this meeting. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda? I see Stephen Stamp has moved to approve the agenda, and a second.
I'll take it.
Oh, okay.
No, it's mine, Devin.
Yeah, it's yours. Yeah, it's yours.
That was Jeffrey Moore. Perfect. Okay, so we will move on. So the first thing is the presentation of the minutes from the previous annual general meeting. So same as I discussed, there's a page here which is the actual minutes from the meeting as we got together, which has the business that we conducted, and then there's a second section which is the results of the voting we did after the fact. And this is all included in the package that is posted on the PIP website, which was emailed to everybody who registered. So if people want to take a moment to read through this, if they would like, they are welcome to. Otherwise, and of course, if there's any amendments or questions, we can take those. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to approve these minutes when people are ready.
I'll motion.
I'll move. Okay.
So I see Aisha has moved. Stephen has seconded. Perfect. So that is well prepared to we'll put that in the survey, the minutes as presented. So let's move on to the reports from staff and officers. So I believe first we have Aisha Barmania's Managing Director's report.
For sure. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Good to see everybody. I don't think I'll just read through my report. That's distributed on the website and sent out in advance, but I'll go over the main points of it. So this past year has been quite productive. We've been able to keep up with our regular programming, settle into virtual operations, and do a lot of back-end kind of documenting PIP operations to set us up for more folks being involved in PIP's operations in the future. And one thing that I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about is that this year we're able to put on a very successful festival called the AudioCraft Festival, which was a week-long celebration of audiocraft, skill, knowledge, and a real celebration of the audio makers in our community. So this has been in the works for a couple of years now, basically since PIP was founded. I'd had this idea of like doing this festival that really put everyone in the spotlight in ways that they were comfortable with, and highlighted the local talent pool of audio workers. And I think we achieved that. And so we were able to do 9 workshops with 11 presenters, and there's a huge variety of skill levels and topics that were presented on, which I'm quite proud of. Angel Hamilton, who has just walked away from her computer, but she did an excellent masterclass on documentary. There was also some, we also were able to reach out to Mars Music and have a very experienced and talented audio worker, Marcus Marr, do a workshop, as well as we were able to reach out to Trent Radio programmers and the PIP membership, who were able to present on skills that they were comfortable sharing their knowledge on. And I think it turned out really excellently, and we got a lot of great feedback from it, and it's something I'd like to do again in the future. The festival was also something that we were able to use as like a springboard to launch a couple of new resources, including our YouTube channel, where all of the festival programs are archived on the YouTube channel, and I recommend giving them a watch. We also were able to develop the resources.ptbopodcasters.ca site, which is still a work in progress, but it's got a bunch of great resources up there already, a lot of them based on programs from the festival. Yeah, following the festival, keeping up with that kind of spirit of skill sharing, we organized 2 more workshops over the summer. So workshops are like a key part of PIP's programming over the past few years. It's a lot of how we do our education work. And so following the festival, there were 2 workshops held, Fundamentals of Documentary Podcast Budgets with Angel Hamilton, and Mistakes I Have Made, Lessons from 3 Years of Podcasting with Bill Templeman, which we're actually hosting again in November. So check out our events page to sign up for that. One reflection that I've had on this past year is that I would have loved to have organized more events, and I think there's interest and appetite for more events from us. Honestly, I'm kind of struggling to find resources and time to organize them all myself. So I'd love to float the idea of moving towards more of like a programming committee model where there's a bit more volunteer involvement, ideally from members or others who can help in scheduling and hosting PIP events or creating resources for the website. And to that end, I've been doing a lot of like documenting our processes and documenting and making like step-by-step guides on how a lot of PIP's operations go. And I think that's a key part of like towards a strategic direction of developing a resilient organization, but also towards like getting more people involved and encouraging that kind of involvement from the membership and building that kind of community that has opportunities for more engagement. Outside of programming, our regular operations have included weekly office hours, the accessible podcasting program, and ongoing maintenance of the ptbopodcasters.ca website, which is where many of our members' programs are hosted. Each of these programs has been utilized on par with previous years. I don't keep a ton of data on this stuff, but I'd estimate it's between 2 and 10 requests for assistance per month, lumping together all of those different programs. Regular operations also includes the maintenance of our creators directory, our social media platforms, and member services conducted via email, including our newsletter. One other thing to note is that PIP membership levels remain steady this year, remaining at 22 active members. It was the same number in the previous year. That's not to say that they're all the same members. We had a bit of drop off and some new members join, but the number remains steady at 22 active members. And I've got a couple of paragraphs here, which I had already talked about doing some of that documentation work for PIP's processes. But yeah, it's been a really good year for PIP's operations. I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do. And I want to thank the board in particular, as well as our active members, including Angel and Jeff, who are very helpful supporters in the PIP community. And the board, Rob, Stephen, and Devin, you guys are such a great asset to have on helping us out, helping me out, frankly. And it's great to work with you all. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any other questions. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Aisha. So yeah, before we move on, maybe we'll have an opportunity here for questions from the membership, if there are any.
I like the idea of the having a committee, like a programming committee that you were talking about, Aisha. I think it'd be, how would you imagine moving forward with that? Like just starting something at at like a follow-up meeting, just discuss who might be and send something out to the membership, seeing who'd want to be involved? Or
yeah, basically, I think probably a first step is like doing a bit of recruiting. Like we've been able to, and I didn't include it in this report because it's technically in year-end 22, but we've started that with our student outreach committee. So just do like a call for interest, see if there's members who want to join, or non-members who want to get involved that way, and then go from there. I don't know. I think we could kind of come up with how it works. I think I would probably be on the committee, but I think the committee volunteers would also be a resource to help organize things, do some of the like day-to-day kind of grunt work stuff of just like setting a date, reaching out to people to see if they want to do workshops, you know, doing Facebook promotion, doing like all of the different like marketing stuff that needs to happen to get people to come. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it working. Yeah. Angel, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the amazing report and all the good work you're doing. And I think it would be great. I would love to be involved with a committee, with a programming committee. I feel that Peterborough has an incredible amount of podcasters that are doing such a great job. And it would be pretty amazing just to be a part of promotion with a group of people and be able to have the opportunity to you know, use whatever, like the students, like when I was talking with L.A. Alfonso the other day, he's like basically teaching, and the students are really enthusiastic about podcasts. So much of the professors now are using podcasts. And as an enthusiast of somebody who's listened to a lot of hip programming, and I'm such a big fan of so many, I think it's a really great idea to have like the distribution of that grunt light labor that you've been, you know, and a couple of people have been responsible for, but I think distributing that across a committee of volunteers that are enthusiastic, that's more sustainable. And the kind of outreach and marketing and promotions and the e-blast and, you know, any kind of work like that, so that people come to the workshops, they come to Audiocraft. Because for me, that was a huge success being a part of it, and a huge success to have people message me and say, oh my gosh, like this is so exciting, and finding out more. Like there's more podcast festivals all the time, you know, in Toronto and Vancouver, but hardly ever a thing in Peterborough. So it's like a gateway for people to learn about media. And Trent Radio, of course, you know, a lot of people are putting their shows, their archives and their new shows in a form of podcasting. So I think it's really great to get a levy and to get more students getting their podcast made, and finding a way to get more professors learning about it as well.
Yeah, those are all great points. Yeah, I'm so glad you're interested. Yeah, Jeff?
So I'm just wondering if you're going to put together a committee for programming. One of the major considerations for programming is funding and paying people a reasonable rate. Are you going to be participating in the committee so that you can provide some guidance in that? Because you do a really good job of making sure that people who participate in these festivals and these workshops are getting paid reasonably. We don't exploit volunteers. And that's one of the things I really like about it. So I was wondering if you're going to be there to provide some guidance, and because you're so great at organizing events and being respectful.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, is your question about paying the volunteers on the committee, or is your question about paying the presenters?
Neither. I'm sorry, I rambled
okay.
for too long. Are you going to provide guidance to the committee in terms of when they're doing the planning, making sure that they're keeping it at the front of their minds that we are not exploiting volunteers, but we're creating opportunities for community members? Is that something you're going to help them with?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think like we haven't created this committee yet, but I think part of that process could be coming up with like goals and a mission statement and a reminder of PIP's values, and some guidelines to work in. Like it is important to me that we pay our presenters, and be like our opportunities are like to share knowledge, but there should also be an opportunity for the presenter to gain some skills out of it as well. So I think that's an important thing to carry through. So definitely, I think I would join the committee. I would be a member of the committee, and that those are values that I would be bringing to the conversation every time.
Okay, that's good to hear. I had another question. I don't know if anyone else has their hands up. I'm sorry. Your report is good. There's one thing that I would like to hear about that wasn't in the report, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. But how was PIP's relationship with other organizations in the community this year?
Pretty good. I'd highlight the Audiocraft Festival as a main way that we've been able to build some new relationships and remain connected with some old relationships. In particular, like we had a lot of Trent Radio programmers, and Trent Radio was very, very supportive of the Audiocraft Festival in helping us get some of their programmers on board and in co-promoting that a little bit. We also were able to make a new connection with Mars Music through the Audiocraft Festival, which I think is a good relationship for us to have and to continue to build. The organization hasn't been formally connected with Southerhouse very much, but that's mainly because of COVID and lack of in-person programming. I remain connected and in conversation with the leadership over there, and I'm confident that we could pick up that relationship whenever we're ready to do in-person programming again.
Do you feel that there's any need to put an emphasis on outreach and trying to establish relationships with different organizations in the community, or is PIP kind of content with where we are and we're going to focus more on people instead of partnerships?
Yeah, I think we could. I think that's a great question, and I would go back to the strategic directions that we laid out back in 2019. One of them was serving the local podcast community, and the other was fostering strong connections. I think this past year, we've definitely been investing more time in the first of those, the supporting the local podcast community just on an individual basis. In previous years, a lot of our relationship building with outside organizations has been a matter of doing workshops, going in and assisting teams. Like we'd often get called into like libraries or schools to do podcasting workshops. This past year has been a little bit like we haven't gotten really any requests for doing custom workshops for teams. I think a lot of my sense is, and without doing any research, is that a lot of these teams have just kind of put a lot of that additional programming on hold because of coronavirus. We could certainly be doing more outreach and more like offers to outside organizations. But again, I think it comes back to that kind of capacity question. Like I would love to be doing more events, but doing the outreach and kind of drumming up that kind of business and like working on those negotiations, getting an instructor to teach them, it's pretty resource intensive, and that's not been an area that I invested time in. And okay, I can certainly take that as a critique.
Yeah, but not a critique, right? It's just acknowledging that maybe it's something that we need to create more space for. And if you need assistance with it, that could also be maybe something that this committee is working towards, establishing connections through events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're also working on, sorry, Angel, I saw you had your hand up briefly, but I'll just say one other thing. We're working on having a student outreach committee to help with like a levy campaign, but there's also potentially a lot of opportunity for reaching out to the Trent student community and partnering with a number of organizations. Like Angel mentioned in the chat, whether PIP had a relationship with the Battle Library Makerspace. That is an excellent relationship that we don't have right now. So I think there's a lot of room for that kind of relationship building to have, and there's a couple different avenues I think it could happen in, and yeah, these kind of committees would make a lot of sense.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you.
Jeffrey, would you like me to amend my report to add a couple of paragraphs about this?
Yeah, why not? Make you work a little more. Thank you. You're spread so thin, but let's see how like razor thin we can get you.
Oh, no problem. It's no problem. Angel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it was really fun to be with you at the Clubs Day and to meet so many students. And, you know, I realized that Anchor, the app or whatever, is integrated with all of the Facebook and like all the WordPress. And they try to make it so that your podcast will be just like, you know, cookie cuttered and like that it's all kind of done for you. And I feel like a lot of teenagers and a lot of youth and such are kind of, you know, going in that route. But as a filmmaker, as somebody who's like an audio editor and as like a producer of like content with documentary mostly in video, but of course, you know, in podcasts with Birthmark and What Is Our a little bit. But anyways, it's the storytelling, it's the editing, it's the actual research, the journalism, and that's what I was so excited about Audiocraft, because actually the experimental, like the finding out from different folk stories, like archives, history, what's going on around town, events, arts and culture. Like there's just such a vast amount of information that's being distilled with the PIP. And I think that's really the asset that people could find out about. Like if I was to do like a presentation with a pitch deck to say like, you know, the archives, you know, even Peterborough archives, like holy moly, like there's just such a they're like wow. And same with public energy, I remember talking to Bill recently with the Arts Council in regards to the whole thing that he was telling me about tourism, about how like there's an attraction and wanting to make grants to attract more people in the town and festivals and always having to write that kind of stuff to, you know. And with PIP, it's like basically like online everywhere in the whole world. There's this amazing history of our hometown, of my hometown, being broadcasted digitally, which is usually Trent Radio, and it was a very temporary abstract like experience, and then now it's like permanent. Now it's like digital and virtual. So I feel like that's really exciting for me. And I think that the Dwayne Collins conversation that I had on Zoom, and I was telling him about my enthusiasm for all things PIP and saying, hey, like it makes so much sense to figure out a way for the Peterborough Independent Podcasting Association to have a relationship with the Makerspace at Battle Library because of their equipment for audio recording and for software and editing, and for people like myself to be able to facilitate workshops, you know, or opportunities to learn. And same with the media lab, like the Art Space Media Lab with their residency there. And, you know, Reframe with Fox Jones as technical coordinator. And there's just such a already like fostering those community relationships, and to be a part of it any way I can with the outreach committee or the student committee. I just want to be a part of that.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Angel. Yeah, I have just a thought coming out of that. Like you're saying about how Audiocraft like kind of intersects with like a number of different areas, like media, education, journalism, storytelling. It's like you can make a podcast of anything, and Audiocraft intersects with so many different areas. It just is occurring to me that we have got to be strategic about these different partnerships to make. And I think given our priority right now to do a lot of student outreach towards our like levy campaign goals, I think it makes sense to focus on like that kind of relationship. So maybe as a topic for further board conversation and further student outreach committee conversation, maybe we direct this kind of partnership conversation and relationship building conversation towards like student outreach and that kind of work. Any other questions about my report or PIP's operations, my work, anything? So I guess I will motion to approve.
I think we have it in the agenda that we'll do a motion for both your report and my report together, if that makes sense. Sorry,
Mr. Chair.
Yep. So yeah, I can present my report now. I'll be quick. I think a lot of what is covered in my report, unsurprisingly, because luckily we seem to be aware of the same reality. Aisha and I talked about a lot of the same things. And a lot of what's in my report is also, I think, really well captured by the discussion we just had, which is great. So once again, I won't read mine, just summarize it in detail. I mean, as of course we all know, there's been a lot of challenges for everyone and for every organization over the last year, and that's been no challenge or no exception for PIP. But like I just summarized, there was a lot of really big successes that we had in the last year, and the fact that we've still been having, with the Autocraft Festival, we had workshops, and we still have engaged membership, and we still have people coming to PIP as a place to learn about podcasting and to be supported. That's all, that's great. That's more than just getting by. That's doing what we're here to do, which is wonderful. And I think we're really well positioned for things in the future, like we just talked about. There's lots of great ideas and lots of great energy in this meeting and in our membership, to carry on and just keep doing the great things that we're doing. So I should already summarize what the Autocraft Festival was. It was great, is one thing that it was. One thing that I thought was really cool, and we were talking about this a bit earlier, I think it might have been before we officially started the meeting, is that there is this interesting element, and Angel just kind of picks up on the things that you were mentioning, of being able to do things online, and that we can have this resource available. I mean, it was kind of effortless, right? That if we had, when we do workshops in person, there's lots of great knowledge in that room, and there can be a great conversation, and there can be, great insight. That then as soon as the workshop ends, it's not gone, but it's only in the people's heads who were there, and there's a magic to that and an excitement to that. But there's also really cool that, like we're recording this meeting, when you do things online, you can just press a button and that information is available after the fact. And so that, having the Autocraft Festival online had its downsides, but it also had the plus that now anyone who's interested in what we talked about or wasn't able to come to the workshops can watch them on YouTube. And so that's a great opportunity to build resources, and to, longer term, it can be an opportunity to raise awareness of what PIP does. Like, it's good information out there in the world that people can access on demand that has our organization's name on it. And that's really exciting. I'm cautiously optimistic about the possibility of having in-person events in the next year. I think, like every organization, there's probably going to be a blended model for a long time, if not forever. But like I say, there's a magic and there's a joy to getting together in person as a community to discuss and to share the things that we're passionate about. And so hopefully, with luck, that'll be something that we can have in the next year. And just wanted to pick up, we talked about a bit the relationship with the students of Trent. So we at the last AGM talked about having a levy campaign. It's been on our radar for a number of years now. But with the entirety of the last school year held virtually and lots of restrictions in place now, it's been very difficult to make progress on that goal, to build a relationship with the students at Trent University. And so I think we have, like was mentioned, the Student Outreach Committee, which has in this year, not in the year we're reporting on, but in the current PIP year, been formed and is full of potential. I think even just for its own sake, building a relationship with the students at Trent is a very important goal for PIP over the next year. I think that the levy campaign is a very valuable goal for a lot of reasons. I think that should be the prize off in the distance. But and if we're ready to do that in March, that would be great. But if we're not, and we just spend this year just getting students and the Trent community involved just for its own sake, I think that's still a really big success and something that is worth pursuing. And finally, just like nice wrapped up, I wanted to extend my thank you, Aisha, to you as the managing director of PIP for all the hard work that you put into the organization, especially with how crazy things have been. This wouldn't be an organization that exists without you ever, but also in the active sense. And also to Devin and Stephen as my fellow board members, it's been a joy working with you. I always look forward to our meetings and to the passion and creativity that you bring to PIP. So thank you. So that is my brief report, and I would welcome any questions if there are any, or comments, or anything.
I have a bit of a comment. I think it's come up a couple times, the gradually returning to in-person events, and I think it is a great idea, obviously, when we can. But it strikes me that one thing we'll probably do, or probably want to do, is as we move forward and start planning events, is always consider, because some of the stuff that we've talked about has been so great, doing some of the stuff online, consider whether any particular event we want to do in person, online, or some hybrid. Like we talked about, potential hybrid AGM, and this turned out to be the better option. But I think it'll be just an interesting nuance all of our programming and all of our events to, what is the best way to deliver them? What's going to have the most impact and make them most accessible for people?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that comes to mind just now that you've mentioned that is, and because Sadler House came up in our conversation with Aisha's report, that one thing that Sadler House has been working on, because they've had the same challenge of all of us, and they are literally a community space. So not being able to be a space with the community is an existential quandary for them. They put a lot of work into being a space where organizations can host online events. So like they've built like a little interview studio. They've put cameras and new digital soundboard in their dining hall so that they can live stream events from there. So there might be a lot of potential for doing blended events, because you could do an event in person at Sadler House, and with their equipment, it is still very new to them, and they're working out all the kinks. I think the first real event they did was the Halloween show, or the Devil's Night show they did on Saturday, just this last week, but it seemed to have worked with that new equipment. But the part of the dream is that for organizations like us, we could do an event in person, and literally all we have to do is press a button, and that event is also being shared online in real time. So obviously there's considerations around how to make the format of an event for that to work, because I think the stuff we're doing is a bit different, because it's not necessarily going to be a presentation where people online, like, we want to have participants engage. So how do you engage an online audience might be difficult, but could be a really cool partnership. It's a student organization. I think that doing like blended events at Sadler House might actually meet a lot of our goals at once, which is kind of cool to think about. Anything further? Any more questions? Discussion?
I guess I kind of have a question for the board. Is there, on account of all the COVID, have there been conversations about how PIP is going to, do we have a stance on, requiring vaccine passports or enforcing mask restrictions? Are there any considerations for the venues that are being chosen? Does the board have these discussions, and is that on the agenda to talk about them if they aren't?
So they haven't been on our agenda because our approach has been to do everything virtually for the last year and a half. I think those are very important things that we would need to discuss before we had an in-person event. But I think the answer to, has the board discussed them? I think the answer is no at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's something that's being considered in the coming months when things are starting to open up again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll let anyone on the board speak up if they disagree, but I hope we're all on the same page, that that's exactly the sort of conversations we'll need to have as we think about having in-person events.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I would say a big part of it is that, like Rob said, since we haven't been considering it, and how frequently or how instantly things can change, there didn't seem to be much point.
Yeah.
So should we move to accept your reports?
Yeah, if there's no further questions, I would welcome a motion to approve the two reports, mine and Aisha's.
I would be happy to do so.
All right, Stephen moves. Do we have a second?
I'll second. They're great reports.
Great, thank you. And so we will put those reports to the membership for a vote. And so next we have our year-end financial update. And so I believe this is going to be presented by Stephen, our treasurer.
Yes. So we do have the financial information. I don't know if folks have had a chance to take a look at it, what has been sent out, or if you want to take a minute to look at it now. Obviously, just jump in with any questions as we go. Thanks to Aisha for being the bearer of the information. So the one thing that we will notice, you see the grant coming in, and the program income and things is detailed and showing the total revenues and the operating expenses. So the net loss of $936 is partly because of COVID, we didn't have the original festival we were planning to. We moved the AudioCraft Festival into this year, and we were given permission by the people that we'd received the one grant from to shift it to this festival. So that was showing on last year's books. So that's why we're using money that we already had in the accounts, but it shows as a loss this year. The Rising Youth Community Grant was one of the grants that we used for the Audiocraft Festival, which was terrific. And as I loved Angel's point that you brought up, that we pay people to do things. We're not, or Jeffrey, actually, it might have been both of you, that we do reimburse people. I mean, nobody's going to get rich from doing these things, but it is nice that everyone is given, their time is respected and their energy and efforts and knowledge. We did have a few things that we changed through the course of the year, including beginning to use Wave. That was just this year, right? That we used Wave?
Yeah.
Or did that come in?
Right.
Yeah. So that shows up in there. There we go. And the idea behind that was to have more accurate or more complete and accessible tracking of all of our financials. And I believe it has been considered successful to this point at doing so. I don't think there's a lot more that we need to go into. The reimbursements are all just, all the reimbursements to iShare are things that they went out and paid for and are just getting reimbursed. Those are all fairly obvious. Yeah, and you can see our current cash on hand is not an enormous amount, but enough to handle ongoing responsibilities or commitments that we have. I think. Oh, that is, and so the Peterborough grant, the one there is the 700 of the other notes. That's what I was referring to. The Peterborough grant for $700 that's reflected as unearned revenue. That is the one that we were able to carry over to the Audiocraft Festival from the previous podcast festival we planned and received it for. So that's why the unearned revenue now is emptied. Any questions or comments or
I have questions?
Yes, Jeffrey.
I'm sorry, I always have questions.
That's okay.
So we lost, but really we spent a bunch of money this year on reasonable programs and good things. So I appreciate that. I'm just curious, is there like a target balance in all of our accounts? Like, is there a target equity that FIP is aiming for just to stay safe? Or are we aiming for zero, at which point we just have nothing?
That's a really good question. And it's a good point. I like the point that you brought up, that it is one of the things we're supposed to do as an organization is spend the money that we accumulate. I mean, and we did do really good things with it. It was terrific. I don't think we've ever actually discussed having a goal of a float or an amount that we would like to have. I think it's more residual. The revenues are residual. We do think about revenues, but it's more residual from thinking we want to get more members. We want to broaden the number of folks that are involved, and that brings in membership, and that also the outreach is the other factor, because that brings in program fees, and that was a larger part of the program fees in the past, as Aisha mentioned, right? Where when we were able to do, when Aisha was able to go and lead introduction to podcasting seminars, that would be buffering the coffers, and obviously that was dramatically limited without being able to get together. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't feel like it does, but
no, it's fine. It answers the question that there isn't currently a target for like an equity balance. I guess if that's the situation, then also, is there some safety net in place to accommodate negative equity? Do we have a lending account that we could tap into if we ever need to?
I don't think so.
Okay. No, I'm just curious, because I mean, I'm imagining a catastrophic event where we lose all of our money, or there's one major expense we have to deal with. I don't know what it would be, but like how would the organization survive going through a zero equity year? Because you still need to spend money to make money to some extent. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious if there's anything in place to accommodate that.
I don't think there really is. I mean, Aisha would be able to address that a bit more completely, but if we had a 0 revenue year, it would mean that we had no members. In which case, what services are we providing? You know, I mean, it's, so I don't know.
No, it's okay.
Aisha,
Yeah, I'm just
help?
wondering.
I think something like, I think we could come up with a policy document on like what our minimum balances should be, but we don't have one right now. PIPS continues to be a very, very small community organization. Like the way I kind of approach it is ideally we'd be spending more or less the same amount of money that's coming in on programs during the year. Ideally, maybe with some leftover so we can build a little bit of security into our bank account, but we don't have a general policy or anything on how much should go into reserve or anything like that. We often talk about how we're a not-for-profit, so we shouldn't be generally generating profit. We should be spending what we earn providing services to our community. But it's a point well taken. We could come up with a financial policy like that.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wonder if there's like a critical balance. Like if equity got down to $500, what's the plan to deal with that? Like, do you have an emergency backup? Who can we go to ask for money, kind of thing, or you know, a back pocket fundraiser campaign or something like that? There might be some value in talking about that and coming up with an emergency plan in case the balance gets really, really low, particularly if this organization ever changes hands or the board gets a little shuffled, because you guys are great and organized right now. And it would be terrible if, you know, a new board came in and had no idea what to do during a crisis. So I think planning for this early while things are stable is probably better than waiting for the emergency to come up. But I'll leave it to you. Just a thought.
Definitely.
I think that feeds really nicely into, like Aisha mentioned in their report, the work to document and kind of regularize PIP's operations. I think that's work that can just be extended because it does, I think, can extend logically to board policies or to longer term financial planning. I mean, I think we're in a very good position now that PIP has very few fixed expenses at the moment. So I'm just as we're talking about this, I'm thinking like, what are the things that if PIP couldn't pay for would be a crisis for the organization? And there are some, certainly, like if our bank account went delinquent, that would be a problem. If we couldn't afford to pay for our website hosting, that would be a problem. But you know, it's the bank account that would be a crisis would be a very small bank account, a very small balance, right? But developing a policy and maybe coming up with a plan to have a financial reserve that we build that we don't touch, which I think for PIP could be a very small one, but it might be a good thing to have. But I think one of the great things that comes out of a good AGM is lots of conversations for the board to have for the next year. And I think that's a good one for the pile for sure.
I just want to flag that Angel had her hand up, has had her hand up for a little while. Sorry, Stephen.
Oh, that's okay. I was actually going to touch on Angel's note, so go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you guys for doing all the amazing work that you're doing. And I guess if there was, I personally have a stake in PIP having longevity in my hometown. So personally, I would do a crowdfunding campaign to help PIP if that ever came down to it. I have a success rate with achieving my goals when I do a crowdfunding campaign when it comes to filmmaking. And I had some success with my Media Arts Peterborough organization a couple of times that I did fundraising and campaigning with crowdfunding, like specifically Indiegogo. And just recently, I just used Kickstarter for the first time. So if it ever came down to it, I'd love to volunteer my services.
That'd be fantastic. And it'd be, as I saw your note come up in the chat, I thought, you know, that would be specifically for an event. Like if we wanted to, you know, if we don't have another grant, we still want to do Audiocraft Festival or something else, doing a crowdfunding for that would be amazing. And if we were able to to outstrip the goal, like go past the goal, extra money could go into having more presenters. Plus, if there is any extra, that can go into building a bit of a fund, because I think we really never had thought about it until Jeffrey's question. So it was a great question.
doing something like that would also increase awareness. It would be like a benefit, a secondary benefit, but it would.
Yeah, for sure. It also, I think the other factor is bringing in funding like that is a great way to become eligible or to become more appealing for other grants. We've talked about that. You have to be spending money to get grants because they want to see that you're using the money you're given, and they want to see that you're putting your own effort into it, which we are. But having another, a creative approach like that would probably help bring in more revenue in that area. So thank you, Angel. Is that Rob? Go ahead.
I was gonna say if there's any more questions, that'd be great. Otherwise, could we have a motion to accept the financial report?
I'll make it. Evan?
All right, and do we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right, Aisha seconds, and we'll put it to the membership for a vote. Okay, wonderful.
Oh, are we voting?
No, put it to the membership for a vote on the.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about right now. I was like, what?
No.
I understand.
Yeah, no, I can see how that was confusing. How I worded that.
I actually did read and we had the discussion before, so I should have known that.
Yeah. Okay. So moving along, I guess the next thing is what is on the screen here, which is Aisha's going to present a quick update on our strategic directions.
Yeah, definitely. So back in 2019, we did a strategic planning process to identify 3 main priorities for the organization moving forward, which ends in 2022. So technically, I guess we're entering our last year of these strategic directions. So I'll just go over the main headers of each direction and what progress we made over the past year. So the first one was building a sustainable and resilient organization. COVID, of course, has led to a process of developing a lot of internal capacity for PIP operations. Over the past year, we made a lot of strides towards cementing and regularizing our operations and also documenting them for future volunteer and staff involvement. And so part of the intention for the strategic direction was to build that regularity in our operations and increase capacity for further growth. And we are definitely on track towards that goal. The second point was serving the local podcast community. We, over the past year, have developed a little niche of programming, particularly along the skill sharing value, which offers the local podcast community opportunities to both share their knowledge and receive knowledge from their peers. This has been a great experiment, and I think it's something that we want to carry forward into future programming. And I think it serves this goal of serving the local podcast community very well. We've also been able to develop assets that are not event-based, which is pretty new for us compared to previous years. And I think this also is an asset to serve podcasters who want to learn at their own pace outside of events. And the last point was fostering strong relationships. PIP continues to have strong relationships with local organizations, including Trent Radio and Sadler House. The Audiocraft Festival has also been a great experience for building new relationships with local music store Mars Music. As we discussed previously, there's more work to be done, building new relationships and retaining old relationships, but we have a plan to do that with our new student outreach committee. That's the strategic directions update. Yeah, Jeff.
Sorry, I just wanted to say I love this document. I didn't even know I need, it's one of those things you don't know you need it until you have it.
I'm pretty sure you specifically asked for this at a previous AGM.
Oh!
Classic Jeff.
Yeah. I love this document I asked for.
Well, the funny thing is I was commenting so that I could ask that it becomes a regular feature in AGM. So I guess I haven't changed my mind since the last time I asked for it. That's pretty funny.
So you still think your great idea is a great idea?
It's so good. I really would appreciate, I do appreciate this document, and I think it's a way to keep the organization accountable for, doing the things it says it's going to do. So thank you for putting it together. Thank you for clearly connecting the activities of the organization to the strategic directions. And I really do hope that we see this at every AGM, because it's just a really nice thing for us to see. It's very clear.
Great. Yeah, noted. I think it'll be a conversation for an upcoming board meeting, whether we what do we want to do with the strategic directions, whether we want to undergo a new strategic planning process, since this one, will be ending in August of next year, or whether we want to extend these ones a little longer. So I'm sure at the next AGM, there will be some indication of what happens with the strategic planning process.
Cool, thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Great. I don't think we need a motion for this one, right, Rob?
No, I think we just had this in the package for information.
Oh, Angel's got her hand up.
I just saw this part under the heading serving the local podcast community. It's the last point. We also have to develop assets. They're non-event based, like resources website that will see podcasters wanting to learn at their own pace. All of a sudden I thought, is that something that's like thinkific? Like because I've been doing online yoga teaching online, and all of a sudden it occurred to me, is that something that people will be able to possibly learn, like, and then maybe get like a certificate or have some sort of like at their own pace kind of learning? Because I also did that for the cannabis certificate as well, and I thought it was really awesome. It reminds me of the whole online learning at school and that kind of thing. So I just want to say that I like that idea.
Yeah, that's not what exists now. What exists now are mostly like articles and videos, that some of them are like walkthroughs with like screenshots of like how to use different software. Some are the AudioCraft Festival presentations. But that's a great idea, and definitely something to consider for future programming.
Cool. So if there is no more discussion around the strategic directions, then I guess we're into the last bit of business on the agenda, which is the election of the board. Or the presentation of board members, because the election will happen through the voting we're going to do after the fact, which I should know. At the moment, I believe the nominees we have for the board are myself, Stephen, and Devin. I've been in contact with a couple of people. I was hoping they would be able to come to the AGM, but looking at who's at the AGM, they did not, which is okay. We had discussed as a board that, our bylaws don't specify a number of board members. We've had 3 for the last year, that we might hope to have a couple more. So I think what we could do is perhaps just for the sake of the membership, the 3 people standing for nomination could briefly introduce themselves, and then maybe have the motion be to then also affirm that there's 2 vacancies that the board could then over this term seek to fill. I think that might be a good approach if people are comfortable with that. So why don't we first have the board members, the nominees, introduce themselves, and then we could, if wanted to have a discussion about that idea of affirming that there's some vacancies, and then put it to a motion. So I'll go first. Hi, my name is Rob Haleman. I am a member I'm seeking re-election for the board to Peterborough Independent Podcasters. As I mentioned, I think at the top of the meeting, I've been on the board since the beginning. I was one of the first directors at PIP, so I've been here. I guess this is the 5th AGM. That means for 5 years. That's wild. I've served on a couple other nonprofit boards over the years, and in my my day job, I am the director of operations at Trent Radio. My dirty secret, I always have to confess, is that I myself am not a podcaster. I love what this organization does. I think that there's podcasting is an amazing medium. It fits in really well with a lot of my my goals and my passions, and I'm very eager to continue to support what PIP does. So if it pleases the membership, I would be honored to serve on the board for another year. Devin or Stephen, are either of you raring at the bit to introduce yourself next?
I'll go.
Okay.
Unless you want to go first, Devin, you're more than
Doesn't
welcome.
matter. No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Stephen Stamp. I think I've been on the board for 2 years. But I'm not 100% sure whether it's two
I
or
think
three
so.
because
I think it's 2.
time is a strange vacuum these days. I had actually just started doing a podcast with my wife now as of Saturday. With a local music podcast, and we were hosting it at PIP, and I came to the AGM, and there was a request for board members, so I became one, and it's been really cool being part of it. I'm pleased to be able to help in the little ways that I do, and it's great to see what everyone does. I'd be happy to continue on. If someone were to really want to be the treasurer, I would be willing to step aside from that particular role and take on a different role. As you saw from my report of the financial statements, I'm a terrible treasurer, but I am content to stay in the treasurer role because we need to have someone. So whatever role would be most beneficial, I'm happy to carry on with if the membership so chooses.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. And just to for the interest of people, the election is to the board, not to the specific roles. So I think if someone is listening to this and eager to be a treasurer, that is a great thing to know. But the election that we're having is for the board, and then the board chooses from amongst its number the president, the treasurer, and the secretary. So the point being, I think, don't take Stephen's comments about his ability as treasurer as an indication about his ability as a board member.
Thank you, Rob. I feel quite confident in my ability to contribute positively as a board member.
Yeah, wonderful. I just wanted to clarify that in case anyone was wondering before we moved on. And Devin, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, I'm Devin Wilkins, and I have 4 podcasts at the moment, and it was because of Aisha's willingness to, and I know Rob has done it on occasion as well, to upload my podcasts to the website, that I said, well, I could kind of reciprocate by offering my services on the board. And I've been the secretary, I think, for the past 3 years, and I'm willing to continue on in that role. But if somebody else joins the board and wants the secretarial position, I will certainly relinquish it, but I would still like to remain on the board as part of my thank you for, and my appreciation for being able to make my podcasts available to anyone around the world that wants to listen to them. And I'm very grateful for all of everyone's efforts. And I think this is a wonderful organization. And I have been trying to work on the disability community to get more people involved in podcasting in general, and PIP specifically. And I want to come up with more ways of being able to present that possibility to the disability community, because it's been a year or so since we've done it. So I would like to do that again and help out wherever I can. That's me.
Great, thank you, Devin. So I guess those are the nominees that we have at the moment. So if there's any questions or any discussion, we could have time for that. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to elect the board members with 2 vacancies, if people are comfortable with that.
maybe the motion should come from someone.
Who's not? I'll
Yeah.
motion.
Okay.
No, I'll
so-
second.
Okay, great. So that's Jeffrey motion, Aisha second, and we'll put it on the voting packet we send out. Wonderful. So that is all the business that we have prepared. So I'll open the floor to any other business if there is any.
I just want to say thank you. You guys are doing really amazing work. I really appreciate everything you guys put into this organization, and it's been really cool seeing it. Doing all the I get to see all of Aisha's hard work, putting things together. But I know that there's a really supportive board underneath that, and making sure that Aisha has all the support that they need. So I think that this organization is built on a solid foundation, and it's a good little community in and of itself, and it's amazing seeing all the positive things that you guys are putting out there. So thank you, and thank you for this meeting. It's very well organized, and the reports are exactly as informative as I would expect them to be. So this has been great. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's great to hear.
And I'll echo what Jeffrey was saying. I also feel very fortunate and grateful that I attended today. It's really educational for me to see how the board meeting is run. When I was doing Media Arts Peterborough like 10 years ago, I had no idea how to be a secretary or to organize governance and reports and paperwork. And it's actually quite enlightening to see how you guys all do that. And I certainly just want to say that any way I can help with outreach, with crowdfunding, with marketing, especially in a committee with people to be accountable to and to work with and have meetings with, and to find more of an opportunity to communicate to the greater public at large and to the Trent University community at large and their alumni, the need for having a podcast, and for you guys are the perfectly positioned organization to facilitate that. So I think it'd be important to have a levy group goal achieved, and I'm sure that with some of the outreach that'll be accomplished, and I really hope that will be, because I really see that this organization should be ongoing and sustainable for like the foreseeable future, because I really appreciate and value it, and I can't imagine my Peterborough without Pip anymore. So thank you so much, guys, for doing your amazing work.
Oh, thanks, Angel, and thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks so much for coming. And Angel will definitely take you up on that offer to help out on committees. I know we've already been talking about it, but it sounds like you've got a lot of passion and a lot of skills to offer us. So we'll look forward to working with you in those capacities. If there is no other business, I will call the meeting adjourned at 5:09 p.m. Is it adjourned? I guess I don't know, because we're voting. Is it recessed? Is it turned into a spreadsheet? I'm going to say adjourned at 5:09, with voting to be conducted electronically by the members over the next 3 weeks. So if people on the board could hang back just for a couple of minutes so we can discuss that voting package to make sure we're all on the same page about what needs to be in it.